Risky business, demystifying inherent and residual risk. Compliance consultant, tell 0800 689 0190, UK, or +44 207 097 1434, international. What is inherent risk and what is residual risk? Inherent risk is the innate risk in a business process or transaction without any controls in place. Imagine IT systems without any passwords, vulnerability scanning, penetration tests, security audits, or other measures to keep confidential data safe and operations running smoothly. That is an example of the inherent risk of modern technology. Clearly, the inherent risk of modern IT systems is quite high. Your firm would almost be guaranteed to suffer a data breach, violate regulatory compliance obligations, and lose money. So businesses implement all the controls we mentioned above, and more: password policies, cybersecurity training, audits, pen tests, locks on the data center door, and so forth. Residual risk is the risk that remains after you've applied all the controls you intend to use, because no matter how good your current controls are, you will never be able to eradicate every single risk. What are examples of inherent risk? In the financial world, inherent risk is often defined as a misstatement that may lead to mismanagement when decisions are based on that misleading statement. This happens not for lack of internal controls but because the statement is simply wrong. For instance, those statements may have been put together depending on a large amount of estimation. Things are beginning to look up. So let's build a new plant, or perhaps a complicated calculation was performed incorrectly and led to erroneous conclusions, say, recording $100 million in revenue when you only had $10 million. Another example is the inherent risk of cash, which is higher than the inherent risk of physical infrastructure such as a bank branch. Why? Because cash can easily be stolen or misappropriated, a building, not so much. The financial service sector is vulnerable to inherent risk because of the often complicated relationships among financial institutions, their many vendors, contractors, and customers. Frequent regulatory changes in the financial sector can make it difficult for financial firms to assure that their business processes and relationships are in full compliance with the law. If all this information is helpful, and you are serious about getting help with your compliance and risk framework, make sure you subscribe by liking, click subscribe and ring our bell. What are examples of residual risk? Residual risk is what's left after you've mitigated all the risks you can identify and treat. It's the risk that remains after your internal controls have done their work. For instance, a company could implement a password policy requiring employees to use complex passwords that must be changed every week. The residual risk of hackers guessing the password would be low, but the resident risk of employees using new passwords that vary only slightly from the old, and jotting them down on a post-it note, would be high. Which password policies should the company use? That depends on the amount and type of residual risk that management is willing to accept. Another example, your company could require 3 executives to approve onboarding of new SaaS providers. The residual risk of hiring a fraudulent provider might be low. Lots of executives are reviewing the contract, but it also means a longer, less agile onboarding process. Or the company could require only 1 executive approval. The residual risk of onboarding an unreliable provider is higher, but the company's ability to embrace new technology runs faster. Which policy is better? Again, it depends on the residual risks management is willing to accept. Key differences between inherent and residual risk. A good risk assessment program analyzes the risk landscape in which you operate, determines the likelihood of specific types of risks actually turning into threats, and puts internal controls in place to filter out the highest risk threats. Inherent risk is the risk level where your business is right now, as you are doing risk assessment, perhaps focused on the amount of risk stemming from your vendors. Once you have determined the risk level you can accept and have applied all controls that you want, what's left is residual risk. Let Compliance Consultant help you get it right. Compliance Consultant can assist you in establishing, managing, and tracking your risk management and controls framework and corrective tasks. The compliance and risk benchmark assessment conducted by Compliance Consultant can give significant insights into where your controls are lacking, enabling you to take immediate action. Call compliance consultant, tel 0800 689 0190 UK or +44 207 097 1434 international. Or click the link at the top of the text below.